Just had a video pop up on my news feed. Gonna go ahead and react. This is CNN doing a segment called Is it morally wrong for George W. Bush to stay on the 2024 sidelines? Let's listen and discuss.
Man, and worked for him in 2 elections and in his White House, and I think he did an amazing job and is one of our greatest living Americans.
Whoa,
No,
whoa,
I don't
whoa,
think he
whoa,
has.
whoa, whoa, whoa. Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
I revere this man and worked for him
If he's saying he reveres George Bush, then
in 2 elections and in his White House, and I think he did an amazing job and is one of our greatest living Americans. No, I don't think he has a responsibility to speak out. I mean, he
one of our greatest living Americans who destroyed the Middle East, led to the deaths of hundreds of thousands of civilians, disabled our country, crashed our economy, housing bubble, a Great Recession. One of the greatest living Americans. But go on, Scott Jennings.
once he left the presidency, he has basically stayed out of politics. Not everybody in his family has necessarily, but he, as a former president, has made the decision not to engage in the way that other former presidents have. And I think we ought to respect that. Look, he gives speeches and he does public appearances and he makes his views on issues known from time to time. But he has personally chosen not to wade into this personally, and I think we ought to leave him alone about it because it's
George Bush probably knows that he left office as one of the least popular presidents in modern American history, if not in the history of US presidencies. So it was good business for him to stay out of the public eye. And that's why really a lot of people have changed their tune on George Bush because absence makes the heart grow fonder. So
it's his right to do that.
It is. It's absolutely his right. You're correct on that. I think to me, what is more upsetting is and disappointing is the fact that we were just having a conversation about how low the Republican Party can actually go in North Carolina, lower than many of us ever thought possible. And yet, how about speaking out about the fact that the former president, who is now trying to go back to the White House, actually incited an insurrection and violence at our Capitol where people died? How about the fact that this man has 34 felony counts against him? I mean, you don't have to speak out if it's about, if you don't want to. But if you don't speak out, this is what happens to your party. And I think I agree, actually, with Liz Cheney that maybe you got to just burn it down and try to build something new.
Did you ever think that Dick Cheney would be the first to endorse a Democrat and not George W. Bush? I don't know. Go ahead.
When I think about
by the way, the fact that if you're a Democrat and you're cheering the fact that Dick Cheney and or Liz Cheney are endorsing you, then I don't know what to say to you. These are morally reprehensible individuals. They have nothing to do with our vision for the country. Dick Cheney is a war criminal and was the mastermind behind all the disasters that took place during the Bush administration. It was just Bush at the helm who really had the last say whether or not he could make the right decision, and every single time he decided not to. So we don't want the Liz Cheneys and the Dick Cheneys on our side. So they can endorse whoever they want. I wouldn't accept, I wouldn't, be ecstatic and, accepting this nomination or this endorsement by any stretch of the imagination.
All of us are talking about democracy. Interesting, on both sides, everybody's saying democracy is at stake. I think the question is, what kind of democracy do we want? Do we want one that's built on vitriol and hate and division? Or do we want one that takes seriously issue like 800 people dying a day from poverty and low wages, 200 and some thousand people a year, that is unnecessary? If that's the case, I don't know of a time when a president puts his hand on the Bible and swears to defend this country from enemies, domestic and abroad, did they ever retract that? So he's still under that oath. We still call him this president, former president. And in that sense, if in fact, I'm not talking about his personal, political and moral responsibility, you see a threat, as he has said, to this country that will keep us from dealing with the real issues that we face, the hard issues we face, yes, there's a moral obligation on every American, and especially those who have led at the highest level. He's never retracted that commitment to defend us from.
I just don't think it matters. I mean,
yeah, it depends on where George Bush stands morally on this, how he sees Trump, and what his perception of how much of a moral threat it is. At the end of the day, it's his decision. He could do whatever he wants, and that's what this guy's about to say, and that it doesn't really matter. I might agree.
maybe it matters to Republicans, but I mean, I don't really care whether
Would
George.
you want it as a Democrat? Like you want?
It's another thing I could say I could use against Scott, you know, the next debate. Say, hey, you're a guy.
And that's all you really want, isn't it?
Yeah, but other than that, you know, I mean, I don't know any Democrat who's going to change their opinion about Donald Trump because of what George W. Bush says. I don't know that even the Republicans would change their opinion about Donald Trump because of what George W. Bush says, because Donald Trump has taken over the Republican Party. But what we do know is that Donald Trump's own people, his own vice president, his own secretary of state, his own attorney general, his own defense secretary, his own chief of staff, his own national security advisor have all condemned him at several different times. His own niece has called him a racist. His nephew has.
Yeah, and so you're going recycling stuff that we already know, at least that I know. Most of Trump's former staff has rejected him, has not endorsed him, and some of them actively advocating to vote against him. That definitely says something about Trump. So Scott Jennings pretty much humiliating himself there. Full-throated endorsement, fawning praise for George W. Bush, one of the worst presidents in American history.